All right, so today I'm speaking about the new moon in Leo, 19 August 2020. And this is a powerful syzygy. It's one of the sweetest new moons or syzygies or lunations in this cycle. The astrology is savory, it's rich, and there's a lot of opportunity here. So let's just jump right in with the chart. First thing to say is there's a whole lot of fire. And Mars is in Aries. Mars is slowing down, approaching its retrograde station, which will take place in September. But Mars rules the Egyptian term of 5 of the 7 traditional planets in this syzygy chart, this new moon chart, including both the sun and the moon. The sun rules the domicile of the new moon. Mars rules the Egyptian term of the new moon. Who are you? Is the basic question the sun wants to ask, but what are you doing about who you are is, I think, where the Mars can come in. In Saturn, Venus, Jupiter, they're all in aversion to this new moon. Saturn, Jupiter, and Venus are in the so-called passive, so-called night signs. These signs where we rest, where we're not out into the world. There's a little bit of a balancing issue where you don't have some of the night energy showing itself so that it can balance out the action. But the other thing I want to say is that there's fixed energy now. But now that these planets have moved into Leo, you have a little bit more of a balance. So 4 points in cardinal signs, 3 in fixed signs, the moon, the sun, and Mercury. And so I think that there's a sense now that we're settling into the new normal. This new normal look, it's still difficult. It's still a change, a dramatic change from the last decade. But we've had a few months to get used to what it's like to be in this kind of new reality as the world grapples with the crisis that it's in. And so I think we can be more fixed in how we're handling it and what our attitudes are and what we've chosen to do in response to the changes. This was an AP article published on the 17th of August, Monday, and the title, New Normal of the Post-COVID World, Professionals Adjust to Taller Cubicles and One-Way Aisles. And I don't know where you are, but where I am, there's been these partitions between me and a lot of almost every checkup person I've been involved with. We're learning to adjust to these kind of new requirements of the so-called new normal. And I think the fixed energy can be part of that. The fixed signs are signs with staying power. It's things that are going to be around for a while. There is a fixed star that's closely conjoined this new moon within 1 degree. It's called Alphard. And this is a fixed star that's in the heart of the Hydra. This Hydra in Greek legend is the offspring of Typhon, who was this great enemy of the gods. He's kind of like the Satan or the dark evil figure of the Greek mythological world. And so I think that as we're expanding out in this Leo season, we're enjoying summer. People where I am are in the parks, and there's this sense of maybe things are redolent of the old world, but there's this kind of lurking evil under the surface. And I think part of it is that we don't have a resolution to the situation, right? The crisis is still ongoing. There isn't resolution. Everybody knows, people that I talk to know that we're going back into it as the Northern Hemisphere gets into cooler weather. Robeson, public domain, his book, The Fixed Stars and Constellations, he talks about the Hydra's heart. He says that it's of the nature of Saturn and Venus, according to Ptolemy. He says that music and wisdom, artistic appreciation, knowledge of human nature, strong passions, lack of self-control, and immorality. I view it as the desire for wisdom and knowledge, like it says here, and that can be artistic, right? Musical wisdom and knowledge, and that's where Venus comes in. Like Venus is music and art. That can often be a gateway or a doorway into wisdom and even knowledge of human nature, right? Sometimes the best poems or the best operas give us that key component to understanding others and understanding ourselves. But if you destabilize that, its passion's gone awry. We lose self-control. Maybe the truth is too overwhelming. The dark reality. What does Leonard Cohen say? It's the awful truth that you can't reveal to the ears of youth except to say it isn't worth a dime. Something like that. And, so there's this idea, this real Saturnian darkness that can come with wisdom. And I think that the serpent represents that. But that's the kind of gravity that we're dealing with, right? And you can feel that in the world. I mean, it's so heavy. Alphard, like I said, is of the nature of Saturn and Venus. But remember in the lunation, Saturn and Venus are averse to the new moon. This star that has the nature of Saturn and Venus is giving a shot to the new moon, but the actual planets themselves can't see or communicate. Pleasure maybe being too pronounced, and that's really jives with the idea that fire, the rapture of fire season's climax is here. and you've got Mars and Aries trining all the planets in Leo. And I just think, just be careful out there. You know, it feels good. The sun feels good. The summer feels good. Being outside feels good. But watch out for pushing too far, or maybe not, being prudent and kind of respectful with how you're engaging in this real fiery energy, because that self-control is a little bit destabilized right now with this demon serpent Hydra and its heart being conjoined the new moon. How are we preparing for the fall? What are our plans to cope with this coming storm that's on the horizon astrologically? You punch in Mars in Aries, Venus in Cancer, Sun in Leo, Sun conjunct Moon, so a new moon. Only twice in 120 years do you have a hit, this new moon and then one in August of 1988. This was when Al Qaeda was formed on August 11th. So the day before that new moon was the birth of Al Qaeda. Osama bin Laden formed that, organization. But also a week later, a truce began in the Iran-Iraq war, and that war ended. And you pull up the headlines now. I mean, this has been ongoing almost continuously, but we saw it this week. Blasts hit the U.S. Army in Iraq. Pro-Iran militias were suspected. Of course, this is just one version of events, maybe the American government or military's version. They said that these explosions were targeting a convoy with U.S. gear, so maybe they're trying to freedom fight a little bit there. And then you also had a story this week, this was on 13th August, that U.S. prosecutors seized Bitcoin allegedly tied to Al Qaeda, ISIS, and Hamas. It's a little bit of an echo. It's not the most impressive hit. So this lunar quarter, really the big features of it are the birth of Virgo season 2020. So the sun will enter Virgo 2 days after the ruler of Virgo, Mercury, enters Virgo. And it's this birth of Virgo season. And the thing about Virgo season since 2011 is that as soon as it begins for any planet, there's a conjunction with the fixed star Regulus that happens almost immediately. And then the other big story this lunar quarter is the Saturn square to Mars, the overcoming square Saturn makes to Mars from Capricorn. This is the first of 3 squares that Saturn and Mars will make this go round. And again, this is going to really dominate the difficulties of this fall. And it's dominated the difficulties we've seen because it's been a sign-based applying over a square as well. So we might see climaxes with some of these stories. The Mercury enters Virgo chart. Virgo is largely unafflicted in this chart, save for being angular to the lunar nodes. Any planets in the sign of Virgo are averse to Mars. They're trine Saturn, so those are easy relationships with the malefic planets. And Mercury in particular will be in its own domicile when it moves through Virgo and its own exaltation. Mercury will be in what's called traditionally its chariot, and so the sun can't harm Mercury. Mercury can still execute the things it wants to do. And anytime Mercury is in Virgo, it's a time for writing, communication. School is often timed to the start of Mercury in Virgo. And there'll be some good elections. There'll be some good Mercury elections. I've already seen some discussion on Twitter about some. And so when the sun enters Virgo, it's much of the same story. The thing I want to add is that Venus will have an overcoming sextile from Cancer to these planets in Virgo, which is a really nice, supportive, flowing aspect from Venus. Venus giving, the sun and Mercury a lot of love, a lot of support. It's just a nice time, enjoy the planets of hopes and gifts and abundance and pleasure and feeling good. There's going to be opportunities for that, especially since the sun and Mercury, like I said, don't make difficult aspects to the malefic planets. I want to turn to Rudyard, always go to Rudyard, but he writes in his book, The Pulse of Life, that Virgo is mainly occupied with analyzing and reacting against or developing further all that occurred during the Leo period. And remember, the Leo period was about injecting the self, coming into a fixed self, one that can withstand involvement with others. It's a self that is durable. Now we're in Virgo, where we try to understand and maybe go deeper with how we can integrate the self that we found and discovered into the world around us using Mercury, using writing, using thinking, using analyzing. He also says here in the same chapter later on that there's the one word, technique. He says it's a method based on fundamental principles, an application of which enables man to perform his work with ease, with minimum wear and tear. It's about analysis to develop technique, to be efficient, to get the job done in a more effective way. And I think that that's important. Once we know who we are, what are we going to do with that? If we don't have the skills to bring ourselves into concordance with people and places around us, it really doesn't do much good. Regulus precessed into Virgo in 2011 in September. And 2 days after that, the Occupy movement began in Wall Street in Lower Manhattan. I think that can show us a little bit what Regulus and Virgo mean. So Regulus is the star in the heart of the lion of Leo Major. Robeson, again, public domain, the fixed stars and constellations in astrology, he talks about Regulus. It was one of the 4 royal stars. So one of the 4 most important stars in the sky because it marked a solstice. It is associated with Mars and Jupiter. Success, high and lofty ideals, magnanimous, grandly liberal, generous, ambitious, fond of power, high-spirited, independent. So you can see how that Mars and Jupiter works together. These are people with grand designs that go after what they want, that want to command things and command people. So if Virgos are techniques for the earth and for materiality and for money and resources, Regulus is ambition, high ideals, and courage. I mean, you can see how Occupy Wall Street fits that symbolism almost exactly, right? This was a movement that took courage and it took fortitude to say, hey, we want to have the material structures of our society distributed more fairly. So it's a courageous fight for territory and for material justice. This just came out on 29 July. There's lawyers that are still fighting for the rights of the Occupy Wall Street protesters who were suing the New York Police Department. So this Regulus story is sort of just beginning, and that was birthed right at the ingress of Regulus and Virgo is still living and still alive. And in this article, they say some of the same legal issues are also pertinent for some of the protests and demonstrations that happened this summer for people that were falsely arrested. So the last aspect, and the next aspect that's just extremely important, like I said, is the Saturn square Mars. Saturn overcomes Mars and Aries from Capricorn, and they're both in each other's terms. They're exchanging terms during this square, the first of their squares, and that's very important because it means they not only are they both relying on their own power because they're in their own domiciles, but they're in the subdivision of that domicile of the other planet. So they need each other. Saturn will have to talk to Mars, and they're making a nice direct aspect, a square, where they can communicate. Now, maybe tense, but they're talking. They can flow with each other. They can gain the information they need to assist each other in actualizing what they want. Now, Saturn's cool, rigid nature must be filtered through the heat of Mars's motion. And so what I think this is that we have to find balance between stifle and flex. Right? We can flex, we can move, we can, power up and take action. But when you're stifled, how do you do that? And it's this great balancing act. There's going to be a lot of creativity that's needed. That's also another way to say this is actions born from long preparation and training. Remember, Saturn is the disciplinarian of the zodiac. It's working for years and years and years to develop a skill. And then when the moment's right, your skill pays off in spades, but you've been preparing for a long time. They say success doesn't happen overnight, or that those overnight successes that do happen actually were years and years in the making. So the other one, a fixed star that is really interesting here is that it's called Alphaerg, and Mars is 47 degree minutes from Alphaerg at the moment of the perfection of the square from Saturn, the overcoming square from Saturn and Cap. This actually, according to Robeson, is associated with the head of Typhon. So you remember earlier, the star Alphaerg that's conjoining the new moon very closely is the son of Typhon. So Alphaerg is Typhon, is Typhon's head. And so the legend is that Venus and Cupid were on the banks of the Euphrates. They see Typhon, who is basically Satan or good evil, and he's the enemy of the gods. Typhon's approaching them. They leap into the river and they're saved by these 2 fishes. And those are the 2 fishes of Pisces. And then that Pisces then were placed in the heavens by Venus for gratitude. But you can see here there's this battle between good and evil, right? This personification of darkness it is part of the Piscean constellation. I think it's really apropos because Saturn and Mars are the great dark evil planets of the 7 traditional, right? This is where we find evil in the stars. I want to turn here to some of the writing on Typhon because there's been a lot of recent, at least creative scholarship on it. But Peter Levenda has a book called The Dark Lord that he published in 2013. And he talks about in this text, this is page 107, that Typhon is linked to an older Sumerian serpent monster that Marduk slain in battle, known as Tiamat. And so this goes back and back. It's before the Bible. right? It's before the Greek myths came into form. And they're related to the averse Sephiroth. The Qliphoth are this kind of twin dark tree, this mirror dark tree to the Kabbalistic tree of life. And the 10 Sephiroth have these mirrored components called the Qliphoth. And these are evil kind of shadow sides to the 10 points on the tree of life. That's what Typhon's about. That's the star that Mars conjoins during this really difficult square. And just to say a little bit more about the Qliphoth are known as peels, shells, or husks, and they represent evil or impure spiritual forces. Okay, they're opposite the holy Sephiroth. So this moment and this period that we're in, it's about a confrontation with really evil forces that are the opposite of holiness. And everybody probably has an opinion on what's evil and who's evil, and I don't want to get into that, but I think we can feel that there's a really dark kind of forces that have emerged during 2020. We've seen it all over the world. And so, it's a long, rare grind to Saturn and Capricorn overcoming Mars retrograde in Aries, a very rare transit, several hundred years or so in the making. And it's like I have this analogy here, the furnace of a hellfire, which is said to be in constant conflagration. You think about these images of hell always burning, right? These underworld energies are going to birth a fate that's been in the work for centuries. That's how life is. It's all building slowly, and then boom, there's a turn of the key, and then things explode. And we're in the explosion moment. But the other point, this may be Jungian, but the shadow must be seen and acknowledged to be integrated, whether that's the collective or personal shadow. It's the only way to heal it. Things that operate under the surface can't be changed unless they are seen, and that's often a really, really difficult process because you have to then acknowledge denial. Hey, I was in denial 2 months ago. I didn't understand. These were the forces at work driving everything about my decision making. Now I see it, now I heal it. And that's ultimately, I think, the positive message of the Typhon, the Hydra, these dark serpent energies, is that we see them, they emerge, we can call them by name, and then hopefully reintegrate them and move into something much, much better. All right, the last overcoming square in the same degrees was 2 years before 1492. This is the 27th degrees of Capricorn and Aries, where Saturn and Mars are respectively. And this is, it's quite close to, so it's 1490, which is very close to 1492. The dark forces of colonialism were born, right? This is the last time these dark energies maybe expanded out from Europe and into these other lands. And you see here, this is from the year 1490 from Wikipedia. Catholic missionaries arrive in Africa's Kingdom of Congo. We know all about the atrocities that took place in Congo with the Belgian Empire in the 19th century. So it's very Saturnian, right? Paternal, hierarchical, controlling. That was the last time Saturn and Capricorn squared Mars and Aries in these degrees. It's timing that. It's uncanny. It's timing that. So now this is going to hit, and then 2 years after this, what will we have in the so-called new world? What new change will be available here? I think it's some kind of AI integrated governance system. So now I want to look a little bit at some of the transits over the next lunar quarter. These cardinal moon transits. When the moon was in Cancer, it was enclosed between the benefics, Venus and Jupiter. And then in the later degrees of Cancer, it was enclosed between the malefic planets. So there's this kind of troublesome nature that shortly follows really good, powerful energy when the moon's in these cardinal signs. The moon will hit Virgo, and this is a really, really sweet pocket of energy because Mercury will have just entered Virgo. The moon will be enjoying all that powerful mercurial energy, able to use that, and the moon will be pinched in between Venus and Jupiter. Sextile from Cancer, and then a trine from Jupiter in Capricorn. I always go to Lunar Mansions, lunarium.com. I think they really give us a sense of how the significations of a sign actually manifest. And so here, love, this transit would be good for love, especially sexual love. So if you got a partner, or if you don't have a partner, get into that sexual healing, that sexual power. It's one of the most primal healing forces that exists. But trade and finances, that's Mercury, right? Sexual love, maybe not as much Mercury, but I think with the earth sign, you definitely have sexual love because Venus and the moon rule the earth signs by triplicity. Beginning of creative projects, certainly Mercury and Virgo. Gardening, traveling, healing, building, cutting and washing hair. This is the 20th of August, in the morning here in Europe, and wonderful pocket of energy. I love this transit. But then we move, right, 22nd August, the moon comes into Libra. And again, we have this in the middle degrees, about 15 degrees. So from 14 to 18 degrees, the moon will be enclosed between the benefics. From squares from both the benefics, but still good for trade, business, wealth, and prosperity, according to lunarium.com, which pulls from ancient texts. This is the 16th lunar mansion, Al-Zubana. Maybe not as good for love and relationships, but maybe focus on your business or your work during this time. This is a tweet I had from this week. It's a yo-yo with these upcoming mood through cardinal signs transits, high, then a low. The low of this sign is when the moon is in the 25th degree, 26th degree of Libra. There's this nasty, nasty, nasty T-square. And this is a trigger, again, of the cardinal T-square. This is as Saturn and Mars are applying. The moon comes and opposes Mars and applies to Saturn via square. And it's a nasty transit, one of the most difficult ones that, I've seen. Now, there is a mutual reception between the moon and Venus, as it can maybe mitigate some of the lunar condition. And this is, by the way, why I like Venus in a cardinal sign. It can have this mitigation here with the moon's transit through Libra as it exchanges signs from Cancer. But this lunar mansion is not good for traveling or risky commercial operations. And they say it's good for financial security. But because the moon is under so much pressure here, I would just say hunker down, maybe close out your trades if you're doing that. Make sure your money, don't be profligate with the spending. After this, the moon will hit Scorpio. And again, that's the moon's fall. It's a sign of the fall for the moon. This lunar mansion, number 18, Al-Kalb, is from 8 degrees Scorpio to 21 degrees Scorpio, again, lunarium.com. And this mansion, while the moon will be enclosed between the benefics, it's really not good for almost anything. So treatment for stomach, maybe if you have stomach pains or exposing enemies, right? That sounds really difficult. That's what it's good for. And again, astrologers are moon watchers. That's what we do. Day to day, it's all about where the moon is and what's happening to Luna. That's why I love the lunar mansions, and I key in always on where the moon is and what's happening with the moon. For me to pick what I do and how I'm working, it's for my electional work, it's always the moon. Cardomancy pull, the Fortress card, Sun in Capricorn. I think it's nice and kind of on theme. This is the third decan of Capricorn. This is actually where Saturn is right now as it makes the square to Mars and Aries. But the Fortress card, this we can hunker down, right? Capricorn, it's all about building that surrounding to protect yourself. You can think about, is life a prison or prison is a protection? Sometimes you hear people, I've known friends of mine that were down and out, and they would try to get put in jail intentionally to get protection, the meals and the safety of a jail cell. So that's the kind of Fortress card. Like, it's on the one hand you're protected, on the other hand you're restricted and blocked off. Remember, Saturn and the Sun have opposite energies. One is light, one is dark. And so this is how the consciousness survives difficulties. You have to build that fortress, get in your set shell and survive. And I think it's wise advice as we start entering the fall, entering what projects to be probably a pretty difficult time, is where are you finding that physical protection right now in your space? All right, as always, you can book a donation-based reading with me, Astrology for All, sjanderson144.com. I look forward to reading for you. And this is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Check them out there. And you can always follow me on Twitter and Instagram at sjanderson144.